Good evening and welcome to the 2016 NFL Draft Night Live of SB Nation, presented by the Jalapeno Fresco Spicy Chicken Sandwich from Wendy's. The gentleman seated to my right, it's Matt Ufford, looking dapper as always.
Hey, thanks,
sir.
Dan. You're looking good too. This is Draft Night, not to be confused with Draft Day. Unlike that movie, we are actually dedicated to creating a quality product.
Snap! We did it. We went there, and now we're moving on.
Take that, Costner.
We do have a fantastic show for you if you're going to take a look at our fun scouting report studio with Susanna Collins and Stephen White of SB Nation. They are looking fantastic. We'll get to them in a second. Also, we're going there. Oh, look at those beautiful people. Look at them. Susanna was the one on the right, by the way.
Yes.
Susanna was the one on the right. And we are also going to check in with, it's Fitzy.
Paul Fitzy Fitzgerald, noted Patriots fan, friend of SB Nation.
Yes.
Because the Patriots do not have a first-round draft pick, we're going to give the Pats fans a voice tonight.
He's having a press conference.
Yeah, there'll be a press conference. We'll be checking in on that live later on, about 10 minutes from now, I think is when the press conference is going to start.
Fair to say, fiery personality?
Fiery, yeah. No, not pleased with the NFL in recent weeks and days.
Yeah, I love Fitzy. So
yeah, no, he's a great guy.
We're gonna check in with him in a few minutes, but top level, what excites you about this year's draft? In the first round, particularly.
Well, obviously we've already had two blockbuster trades to send the Rams and Eagles to the top of the draft. But more than that is the excitement that comes from more trades. And from everything that we've seen is that there are going to be many more trades to come tonight. And yeah, I love anything that just extends this night and makes it longer, and trades do exactly that, Dan.
So we're expecting, obviously, Carson Wentz 2, Jared Goff number 1 to the LA Rams, and Carson Wentz to the Eagles. And as you can see, we've got our list of top 5 quarterbacks. I have Cardale Jones in there in my top 5.
Really?
I feel like there is enough raw material, and his arm is so strong. And even if it's possible to ignore 2015, he had a really good 2014 ending. So I like him a lot. But yes, 1 and 2, it's going to be Goff, it's going to be Wentz, and there's not a lot of drama there. How do you feel about them as quarterbacks?
I think that Jared Goff is easily the best quarterback of the bunch.
Interesting.
I think that given the right environment, he will be an NFL success. I don't know if Jeff Fisher is the right environment.
I know the answer to that question. But yes, you see his numbers and you see the productivity he had at Cal.
He's been working out. They found his nutrition specialist found out that the reason he hadn't been able to get past 200 pounds is because he had like a protein deficency. His body couldn't process protein. Right. They fixed that. He's been able to put on more pounds.
Saw that,
he's going to finish up towards he'll get past 220, 230 in the coming years. So he's going to fill out, and he already has the footwork. He has the arm. He makes the throws, etc. All the cliche speak that we're so familiar with. I think Goff, even though he doesn't really have like the resume as a winner at the college level, I think that's more speaks to the quality of Cal's program than it does to him as a quarterback.
Absolutely. And Wentz, he is that perfectly moldable clay athlete.
Yes.
He is athletic. He moves around well. He needs to protect the ball a little bit better. Had sort of moments of inefficiency for the Bison of North Dakota State. But certainly, if you are going to construct a quarterback, and he's not one of those like sit in the pocket constantly types,
no,
he is what you want.
Yes, he is. He looks like a quarterback. Right. We're just going to throw all the cliches out in the first couple minutes. But I have serious concerns because he is from the FCS program that are basically our only successful precedents are Steve McNair and Joe Flacco. And that's both of those guys were top or first round picks, and they turned out just fine. So maybe Carson Wentz is the third time, makes it a group of 3, but I have serious concerns about him being thrown into the fire. I think that if he does go to the Eagles, they already have a deep quarterback.
Yes, they do.
Not necessarily quality, but certainly deep. That there are options, so he doesn't have to start right away. That gives him the better chance of success.
All right, and with that, let's check in with Ryan Van Bibber, the SB Nation NFL editor, and certainly one of the big names and faces and shoulders behind Turf Show Times, our LA Rams community. So, Ryan, when you first saw that the Rams had traded up quite the haul to get to that number 1 overall pick, traded with Tennessee, what was your reaction?
I wasn't a fan of it.
Why?
It's I think the problem the Rams have with this trade is that for a while their philosophy was we'll get a quarterback like Nick Foles, and this is sort of after the Bradford thing kind of fell apart on them. But we'll get a quarterback like Nick Foles and just kind of string it along and be good enough and build our roster. And they've got to the point now where the roster's really thin. They lost a lot of they lost a lot of key players. Janoris Jenkins, starting cornerback through free agency, for instance. Chris Long, the defensive end, this season. So you've lost some depth there. And now instead of having those draft picks to replace it, you've kind of staked it all on a quarterback. And it's not really the situation where they're probably they have the patience and they have the ability to let Wentz Goff rather kind of sit and learn the system and get a feel for the NFL, the speed of the game, and what NFL defenses do compared to what a Pac-12 defense can do. So it's a big jump, and then there's a lot of pressure on that. And I just we haven't seen much success with this team developing quarterbacks or many offensive players over the year. They don't have a great offensive line. They have Todd Gurley, and that's great, but they don't have a lot of other depth on offense, and they just gave away a lot of chances to build that depth.
Now, RVB, I think it's very interesting that the last team to pull off such a mega trade and move back and garner a whole bunch of picks was the Rams. And do you think that their lack of success following getting a whole bunch of picks that produced a lot of talent and not turning that into a playoff run has led them to mortgage these future picks and say, you know what, we just need a quarterback, and that's what we needed all along?
Yeah, and then you can see that this is a pressure move. I mean, they moved the team to L.A. The coach is in his fourth year, hasn't had a winning season yet. There's pressure to make this stuff happen now, and they need that. So this is sort of a desperation move in that respect. And you can look at it. Maybe it buys this regime another year or two. Maybe it buys them sort of a goodwill gift to the new fans out there in Los Angeles. But it's definitely a move that could really come back to haunt them because draft picks are valuable. I mean, the secret to Moneyball in the NFL is having as many draft picks as you can get, and when you give those away and you stake it on one player like that, it's tough to recoup that in a year later. You know what I mean?
Do the Rams fans that are in your community on Turf Show Times, do they generally agree with your sentiment? Obviously, having the #1 overall pick, it's quite an enticing thing. We have the pick of everybody. Do they agree that they would, with you, that you would rather have more picks this year, next year, et cetera?
I think there's a healthy divide. I mean, there's a lot of people. It's exciting. I mean, it's exciting to finally have a franchise quarterback. I mean, you go back to 2010 when Sam Bradford was the top choice and the Rams had that. And, there's a lot of excitement at that point. I can remember that pretty clearly. And, there was nothing this kid couldn't do coming into the NFL. And obviously we've seen how that worked out. But so, it's hard to dampen the kind of enthusiasm that something like that brings.
Do you like Jared Goff? Is he somebody that when you watch him play, you're like, I could see this? And forget about the Jeff Fisher part. And I know as a Rams fan, it's very difficult to forget about Jeff Fisher.
Jeff Fisher just needs more time to implement his system.
More time. There are fewer Schottenheimers as it relates to the Rams. But do you like him as a prospect that could blossom into a top 15 quarterback in the league?
Yeah, very much so. And I think I don't think there's a huge argument that he's the best quarterback prospect in this year's draft. Now, he's not an Andrew Luck. He's not a Cam Newton. Those are the kind of guys that just don't come around very often. And I think that's why you draft a guy like that, whether you draft him at #1 or #10. I mean, I think you've got to have some patience with him and not be willing just to throw him out there and say good luck with Greg Robinson at your left tackle.
RVB, thank you very much for your time. Good luck with your emotions these next few days. And I don't know when the Rams pick after #1, but good luck with the filling out of the depth.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, guys.
All right.
He's been through a lot. He's been through a lot these last years.
He's been through a lot of things. I'm being told we might be good to go with Fitzy. At the press conference.
Is Fitzy coming up to the
I think
the podium
he is
now?
Approaching the podium. Let's see if we have a live look in at Fitzy. Are we? Yep, it looks like we do. Okay.
Free Brady again!
Fitzy, Deflategate continues to haunt the Patriots. They lose their first-round pick, and now Tom Brady for 4 games. How are New England fans feeling?
The whole Brady thing, I mean. Right now, Pats fans are basically an unleashed kraken of insufferable infuriation over the whole thing. As to how it pertains to the draft, actually, I'm glad the Pats don't have a first-round pick. Because now I don't have to waste 3 hours of my life watching the first round only to see Belichick trade out, all whilst being bombarded verbally by the three-headed hydra of idiocy that is Kuiper, McShay, and Berman. Also, we're all sleeping on the Kenobi factor being in play. Strike them down if you wish, but they will just come back more powerful than you could possibly ever imagine.
But Kenobi just talked a big game, and he really just came back as a ghost, right?
Brother, nothing you say can make me any less proud of my coming up with that Star Wars reference.
Free Brady again!
Paul Fitzy Fitzgerald.
Yeah, a legend.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I like about him? I like the fact that he has like a more blue-collar presence, but then he throws out three-headed hydra of idiocy.
Yeah,
Great.
he's also, to his credit, gotten less racist over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Big
really,
shout out to Fitzy and tolerance.
Grow through the years. Now, one thing he mentioned, though, that was Bill Belichick's tendency to trade down out of the first round. And you and I have a weekly show leading up to the draft called Future Consideration.
Yes.
We talk about the draft every single week. And one of the shows that I liked best this season that we did was talking about what the best teams do in the draft and what the worst teams do in the draft.
Yes.
And you compiled data from previous drafts and figured out basically what those do. Keeping it to the first round, because we're only thinking about the first round tonight.
Right.
What do good teams do in the first round? What do bad teams do in the first round?
So I looked at the best 5 teams over the past 5 years and what they've done over the past 8 drafts. So that's the Packers, the Broncos, the Seahawks, the Bengals, and yes, the Patriots. A lot of people like to give credit, they have Bill Belichick, they have Tom Brady, and they can win with anybody. Not so. They've drafted very, very well. They amass picks. So what they specifically do, the best teams do, is they take much more in the way of defense in the first round than offense. And when they do draft offense, they tend to look at offensive linemen. The worst teams in the league draft offensive skill players, quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, at a much, much higher rate than the best teams do. And the best teams tend to draft, as you see what the teams do, they tend to draft from the inside out. When they do draft offense, it's offensive line. They draft defensive linemen at a much higher clip. And the reason it seems that they're avoiding, these are the best teams, offensive skill players, they're so dependent on other positions that even if a receiver is great, well, he's got to have the right quarterback, he's got to have the right coach, he's got to have the right system, he's got to have the right protection. So it seems to me that a good defensive player can become great, a great defensive player can become unbelievable in a Hall of Fame caliber. And even an okay defensive player is still contributing. He's still making tackles. And when you build a great defense, and you look what the Broncos did this year. They didn't need a great quarterback. It might be an exception to the rule, but they had a great youngish defense and subpar quarterback play and came home with rings.
Yeah, no, there are kind of 2 ways to win a Super Bowl. One is, one thing it's nice to have is like one of the best quarterbacks in the game.
Yes.
Those are actually pretty rare. The other one is to say, whoever's our quarterback, we'll figure something out, but we're going to create just a legendary smash mouth defense that stops teams from scoring.
And what do you have to eventually do when you have a great quarterback? You got to pay him.
Yeah.
So you have to be good at filling out that roster with cheap quality depth, which you look at the Patriots, the Packers, all these teams, they're not paying the running backs anything. The Broncos are now paying C.J. Anderson like $6 million.
Stupid!
The Seahawks did pay Marshawn Lynch.
That's the one example of a team in recent years paying a running back and having the running back, the workhorse running back.
But what was the reason that they were able to afford to pay Marshawn Lynch
Because they were paying $800,000 to Russell Wilson.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is smart drafting, and they get him in the 3rd round?
3rd round, yeah.
Yes,
75th
absolutely.
pick overall.
So the worst teams, you become less bad, draft from the inside out, build up that defense, and eventually the offense catches up, because a great defense creates an okay, at least, offense. It creates field position. It wears down opposing offenses, wears down opposing defenses. It's a win-win, it seems like.
You've just suddenly made me very nervous for the team that drafts Zeke Elliott tonight.
So we love Zeke Elliott, right?
Absolutely.
As a prospect, Zeke Elliott is great. He is a 3-down back. He is great even without the ball in his hands, running routes, blocking. Some people have said he's the best fullback in the draft as well, just sort of by happenstance of his blocking ability. But it's still tough because there's so much injury risk with running backs. So
Well, you actually did speak to Zeke Elliott, did you not?
I did speak to Zeke, and if you take a look, Zeke explains, and this is a much better job that either one of us could do, why he is the perfect modern NFL running back and where he has improved.
I'm a very versatile player. I think that I'm a three-down back, and I think that my ability to be a great runner inside the tackles, to be a great runner outside the tackles, to catch the ball at the backfield, and to block very efficiently is what's going to help me translate to NFL offense. I think that my improvement came from, winning those one-on-one situations when I get to the second and third level, and just kind of playing very well off contact. And the biggest thing I think that helped elevate my game was just my knowledge of the game, becoming a student of the game, being able to anticipate when I play instead of kind of reacting. And, when you can kind of anticipate what's going to happen before the ball is snapped, then you don't have to react, and you can play that much faster.
Zeke Elliott, of course, one of the centerpieces of a fantastically talented Ohio State team.
Oh, absolutely.
And that talented team is now entering the draft. There are as many as, 14 Ohio State players that might be drafted this year?
There are a lot of Buckeyes that could make an NFL team very happy. It could be 5, could be 6, somewhere in that range in the first round. Obviously, the gold standard is the 2004 Miami Hurricanes with Sean Taylor, Jonathan Vilma. It goes on and on. I don't see this Ohio State class being on that level, at least at the next level. But so we have Joey Bosa, Darren Lee, Zeke Elliott, Eli Apple. Who am I missing here? We have the list, but Michael Thomas could sneak in. A lot of people like him physically as a receiver. This is a national championship squad that is now entering into the NFL.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of talent. Joey Bosa.
Oh, Taylor Decker, I forgot
Taylor
too.
Decker, of course. So that's 5 possible first rounders. So maybe 6, probably 5.
Realistically, Von Bell could be in that second, third round discussion as well. The safety, very talented safety. But yeah, Michael Thomas is interesting. He's sort of a little bit more raw. And we are now very fortunate to get more information out of, I would say, a very good receiving crop at the top of the draft. Fortunate to have everything broken down for us by Susanna Collins and, of course, our big-time scouting report analyst, Stephen White.
Thank you, Dan. Well, as Dan mentioned, a pretty deep wide receiver class this year, but there are 2 guys in particular that you are pretty high on, but they're very different players. Talk to me about TCU's Josh Doctson and Baylor's Corey Coleman. You really like these guys.
Well, Josh Doctson is a little bit taller. He's 6'2", and he does a great job of attacking the football in the air. Now, some of that is because he has a 41-inch vertical leap, which he showcased at the combine. It was just ridiculous. But I think the bigger factor is he just has great hands. This guy can go up and get the football, and he catches the ball correctly with his thumbs together. And I just think Josh Doctson is going to be a big play machine in the NFL.
And catching the ball is pretty important.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
You're a receiver.
And we'll talk about this about another guy.
Yes, we will. All right. Yes, we will get to that. Now, what about Corey Coleman?
Now, Corey Coleman is a little bit smaller, but he is magical with the football in his hands. Whether it's a catch, whether it's a return, whether it's an end around, he is a threat to score from anywhere on the field. And if, I say he's kind of like a little bit taller, a little bit bigger, Tavon Austin.
Sure.
And if he goes to a team that does a good job of feeding him the football, he's going to be a superstar on the next level.
Also really fast, too.
Really fast.
All right, so another receiver whose name that we've heard mentioned is Notre Dame's Will Fuller. Another guy with a lot of speed, but you're not convinced that he is a guaranteed first rounder. Why is that?
Well, I like Will Fuller. He has the kind of speed that can take the top off of any defense just with straight line speed. You don't have to really scheme him open.
Okay.
But I like my speed receivers to do a little bit more than just run go routes. And we were talking earlier about catching the football being pretty important for wide receivers.
Sure.
He catches the football underhanded a lot, which makes him a body catcher. And so he's not nearly as good, in my opinion, as far as catching the football as a guy like Josh Doctson.
All right.
And now I do understand why some teams would want him in the first round, but that's just a little too high for my taste.
Ted Ginn 2.0.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, and Ole Miss, Laquan Treadwell, another name that we're likely to hear in the first round. Your thoughts on him?
I like Treadwell a lot, man. He's a big, strong, physical wide receiver, and he plays with a linebacker's mentality. And so you just have to pull for a guy like that. Now, I do say that I have some concerns about his long speed. Obviously, he had the injury, and maybe he'll get faster eventually. But you just have to pull for a guy like him who just plays the game the right way.
Now, well, you mentioned his injury, and it's actually pretty remarkable that he's even in this draft conversation right now, considering all the roadblocks that he has had at this point. Here is a closer look at his journey.
The prospect that almost wasn't, presented by Wendy's and the jalapeno fresco spicy chicken sandwich. Football is a game of inches. Another couple inches in Ole Miss Auburn in 2014, and Laquan Treadwell scores the game-winning touchdown. But a tackler fell on his leg, breaking his fibula and dislocating his ankle in a gruesome injury. In the shock and the pain, Treadwell fumbled just short of the end zone. In that instant, Ole Miss lost the game, and Treadwell, a 5-star recruit in high school and the SEC's Freshman of the Year in 2013, went from surefire future pro to someone who might never have played the game again. But he healed, he rehabbed, and he came back with a vengeance. In his junior year, Treadwell caught 82 passes for over 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns. And when he faced Auburn again, he torched them for over 100 yards and a touchdown in a win on the road. Scouts say he might have lost a step from before the injury, but is that extra step what would make him an NFL star? Or is it more important to know the depths of his perseverance and resilience? A slightly different angle or a slightly heavier defender, and Laquan Treadwell might never have played football again. But if he had made it a few more inches into the end zone, he never would have had the chance to come back stronger.
Good job with that, Matt.
That guy was handsome, huh?
I am impressed by that work. So another position group that is, I would say, maybe the deepest one in the draft, defensive line.
Defensive line, absolutely.
Will include interior linemen and sort of edge rushers.
Yeah.
So your 4-3 defensive ends and your stand-up outside linebackers in a 3-4.
Supposedly the deepest draft for D linemen possibly ever.
Yeah, if you're drafting in the first round, you have a good chance to grab a very, very good player. And there's just a variety of different players, from Joey Bosa and DeForest Buckner, who play sort of inside-outside. Noah Spence is a great pass rusher.
Yeah.
Shaq Lawson and Kevin Dodd, the Clemson duo, who terrified Alabama.
A year ago, Robert and Kamdiche was a surefire top 3 pick, and now he's being talked about late first round, second rounder because of the character concerns and his family, etc. But this is a guy who has phenomenal talent and a huge ceiling, and it's one of those things where I want to know more about them. And good news, we have a former NFL defensive lineman here.
Yes.
You guys are obviously talking about me.
Obviously.
I mean, look at me. It's obvious. All right, so Stephen, it seems like we've heard a lot about Joey Bosa, Kamdiche, but there are two guys that you feel like have kind of flown under the radar so far in DeForest Buckner and Noah Spence. What is about these two guys that you like so much at the defensive line position?
Well, DeForest Buckner is a 6'7" mountain of a man, and he can run over just about anybody you put in front of him. Now, he's going to have to get a little bit more finesse in his game if he wants to be a truly dominant pass rusher. But if he can, man, the sky is the limit for this kid.
Okay, and Noah Spence, you said, is the best edge rusher in this draft. What have you seen from him?
Right, he's definitely, he could be. I only got to see 3 games with him, but he was so impressive as a pass rusher in those games. Now, he's a little bit undersized. He's 6'2", 251 pounds. So he doesn't have the kind of scheme versatility that some of the other guys have. But if you want a guy who can get out to the quarterback without having to be schemed up in the pressure, Noah Spence is the dude you're looking for.
You also said that he's an effective pass rusher on both the left and the right side, which is a
absolutely.
huge
And that's what makes him good in either a 4-3 defense or a 3-4 defense. So he can flip-flop him, and he looks just the same on the right as he does on the left.
Insert him anywhere. All right, so a couple guys out of Clemson that you're also pretty high on in Shaq Lawson and Kevin Dodd. You said Shaq Lawson is everything you would want in an edge player. Elaborate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, it's rare to find 2 top edge rushers from the same school coming out in the same year. But both of these guys can get the job done. Now, with Shaq Lawson, he's a little bit smaller, but that guy is a lot more polished. He has a plethora of pass rush moves at his disposal. Now, Kevin Dodd, on the other hand, is a little bit more raw, but he has the size that you look for, the length that you look for, and he has one really good pass rush move. And he may end up being the more dominant player long term. But regardless of that, I think both of these guys have a very bright future in the NFL.
You also said Dodd is a little bit more fluid.
Right. He's the kind of guy who doesn't have to have everything go perfect for him to win as a pass rusher.
Awesome. Great stuff, Stephen. Guys, we'll send it back to you in A.
I learned so much.
Yeah.
I learned so much.
Man.
I learned that I will never be a dominant pass rusher. I do not have any of what Steven considers to be necessities to do that.
I have a lot of upside.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you have nowhere to go but up.
Correct.
That is absolutely correct. Any teams you're particularly excited to see what they do? I'm excited for the Browns, but start.
I think the Browns are an interesting case just because we have we have the hint that this is a team that might actually be doing things smartly now.
Right.
I'm interested to see, there's a couple teams picking around 20, among them the New York Jets, who might need a quarterback.
Yep.
And is that going to be where Paxton Lynch goes? Or are they going to say, no, we don't want them? I'm very intrigued around 20 to see what happens. And then I think, not that I'm breaking any ground with this prediction, but I do think that some team will trade up between 26 and 30, will trade back into the first round in order to draft a quarterback ahead of the Broncos, because the Broncos need a quarterback desperately at 31.
Yeah, I'm curious, like you mentioned, to see what the Browns do with a new front office, basically. And listen, you can do all the due diligence. You can find the pick that will make your team better for years to come, the right personality, the right whatever, the right fit for the scheme. And he could get hurt. He could just not want to play football anymore. There's so many variables involved with the draft that it's such a... I won't say it's a crapshoot, but there's so much luck involved at the same time.
I'm also interested to see what the Jaguars do at number 3.
Absolutely.
There's talk that they might be interested in trading back as well. And no matter who they pick, they're going to have their pick of whoever they think is the most talented defensive player in the draft. And they're going to be pairing that first-round draft pick with last year's #1 draft pick, Dante Fowler. So that defense that already showed signs of great improvement last year is, I mean, obviously they had problems in the secondary, but they're going to get an edge rusher plus the draft's best defensive player in their eyes.
Yeah,
so
every year when we talk about the draft, ever since, what was it, the Brady Quinn year, and then Johnny Manziel, we think about the fallers, like the people that just hanging around in the green room awkwardly. I really hope it's not the case, but Miles Jack, with the injury concerns, top 5 pure talent when healthy, but he uttered the word you should never utter when you're coming back from injury, and that's microfracture. And so he is good enough to go top 5 because if you watched him at all at UCLA, he was just a complete monster all over the field. I hope he's not that guy waiting around.
Can you imagine the Ravens getting Miles Jack? How unfair would that be?
They're going to get Miles Jack, or they'll get DeForest Buckner, they'll get Joey Bosa, they'll randomly get Laramie Tunsil. You know it's happening. You know Ozzie Newsome is just going to be like, yes.
As the Ravens...
Yes.
The Ravens had a bad season last year, but they it's so unusual to see them picking this early in the draft, and to see what they're going to be able to get on the defensive side is just mind-blowing to me.
Ton of close games. They had brutal injuries. And we talked about this on Future Consideration.
We did.
We said Ravens, Raiders, and Jags. Not all that far away from a good draft taking them to the playoffs. So very curious about that.
Well, we're closing in on the end of our pre-draft show. We are going to be live again once more on our YouTube channel at 11 p.m. Eastern. That is 10 o'clock in the Central Time Zone and 8 o'clock on the West Coast. The Mountain Time Zone is also there. I don't know what time that is in the Mountain Time Zone.
It'll be 5 p.m. for DeForest Buckner's family in Hawaii.
Oh.
So there's that.
Listen, let's go to Studio B with Suzanne and Steven one last time. Hey, guys, how would you rate our pre-draft show?
Hello.
Oh! 100.
Oh, man.
We got fire and 100. Okay. What are you grading this?
Yeah, so we are going to have all emojis for our draft ratings.
Yeah, what does a B plus mean? What does like an 8.2 out of 10 mean?
No.
This is solid grading. Like, listen, somebody's throwing money out the window, drafting a running back in the top 5. We're gonna tell you. We're gonna tell you.
And before we end the show, we of course have to mention our wonderful sponsor, Wendy's.
Yes.
And
it's the jalapeno fresco spicy chicken sandwich.
That is a mouthful in more ways than one, sir.
Indeed it is, and tasty as heck.
All right.
There it is.
Is that the end of our show?
Yeah, how would you grade our show?
That was, okay, not that. There we go.
Not poop?
No, it was, I'm going to give it the flying money.
You're going to fly? I'm going sunglasses. We cool.
All right,
we
all
cool.
right.
Thank you very much
See you all
for
at
watching.
11 p.m. on the East Coast. Tune in again.